G'day, my name is River Langford. I'm 19. I study at Ultimotive and I study my Diploma of Music, performance, yeah. I'm a music performer and I play a bit of drums, play a bit of keys, I do what I do and yeah, that's about it. That's me. So yeah, I play a lot of instruments. I play keys, guitar, bass, I play abstract things like, tuba and xylophone and stuff like that. But my real love is drums. I play drums professionally. I've been playing professionally for about 6 months, like more or less full time. And yeah, it was my first instrument, my first love, and still my love to this day. Drums were the first instrument that I learnt. I really enjoyed playing them all through high school. I was in punk rock bands and I started kind of getting into R&B and playing that, so my drumming career so far has been very long and tedious, and I've learnt to put up with myself playing drums. Probably my favourite song that I've written is Apricot Eyes, purely just because it was when I was getting really into wordplay, like peak COVID. I moved to Sydney 5 hours away from home, alone, to study music, to kind of chase my dream. And I kind of had this beat and I was like, cool. And I was throwing out random words, and then I kind of came up with this line and it was echoing in my head. And then I was putting research into the words, I was singing, and I really wanted to paint a very clear picture of how I felt. And especially when it comes to love and loss and stuff like that, it's you don't know how you feel specifically, so it's a very complicated issue. So to wrap it up with certain lines, I really spent a lot of time on my wordplay for that song, and that's just how I write music now. I really focus on my wordplay and, multiple different meanings, for certain concepts, and certain words and certain lines could mean this or this or this or this, and I feel that all started with Apricot Eyes, so I really like that song. So I grew up in a hippie commune, shout out to my mum. Yeah, and it was always, music and backpackers and, we had a big organ and it was always a bit of music. And just from a young age, I was always just tapping, on pots and pans and everything. All of a sudden I got a drum kit given to me and I was this little kid playing drums, and it all kind of evolved from there, and then I started learning ukulele to kind of have a bit of a melody thing, and a harmony thing, as well as drums. And then ukulele turned into guitar, guitar turned into piano, piano turned into bass, and now all of a sudden, when I write, because I'm a one-man kind of band sort of thing, I incorporate everything, all the instruments that I've kind of learnt into a song. I'll start with a melody, and then I'll think about it, or I'll start with some big chords, and I'll really just dive in, and I'll write a shit drum track that I'll just throw away, and I know I'll throw it away, and a bad bass line that I know I'll just delete later. But it's if you start with a bit of gold and a bit of inspiration, you just go, boom, this is what I want to do. It really just, it kind of writes itself in a way, because I play everything, so I don't need to communicate with anyone. I can kind of just go, boom, headphones on, guitar, piano, boom, bass. Oh, I don't like it, but it will do, And as long as your core idea is kind of gold, it just takes a little bit of polish to make it shine, The first song I ever wrote was with this guy called Paul Mack. So he's a professor at the conservatorium. I went there for a summer program when I was about 14. He kind of came down. He was teaching me piano. This was my first real introduction to piano. And Paul Mack's a great pianist and DJ and producer and won many arias and everything, and I didn't know it because I was young, and he sat down, he was like, this is what we do, as a producer, this is what we do. And I was like, okay, so I wrote a song with him. My first song was ever written with Paul Mack, huge shout out. And yeah, it was amazing seeing how a studio works. And I immediately went home and bugged my dad for a little MacBook to get GarageBand on. I got a secondhand like $200 MacBook and just like plugged it in with musical typing, shout out to any of the producers because they know what I mean, and just learnt painstakingly since 14 to now, like 5 years of just sitting behind a computer and kind of just going, how do I figure this out? Like if I want this to sound like this, how do I make that happen? And yeah, being self-taught means that I've got a wacky, independent, experimental sound, but I really like the sound I'm kind of going for now, Yeah, so when I wrote Jazz and Shit, the album, it was kind of like a collection of songs that I wanted to post, but I wasn't brave enough. And, with my 18th birthday kind of around the corner, I was like, this is my time to create a bit of a legacy, like he was 17, he wrote this sort of thing. And yeah, like obviously I'm very inspired by jazz greats, both past, present and emerging. And so diving into like the world of jazz, I was like, wow, what is possible with these chords? Like what can I play that doesn't make sense music theory wise, but makes sense emotionally, So that whole album was like me kind of sitting down with loose jazz concepts and going, how do I stick these together to create something original and unique? Because when we think of music, like really the forefather of our modern music is jazz. The list of people I'm inspired by could fill an entire stadium. Like really, I listen to everything. I really like dive deep into discographies of people that I just find. But probably the most self-reflective discography is Home Shake. He's got this beautiful vibe. It's all analog gear. It's all dreamy. It's all, that delay, that really big, like, circuit bending. And also it's him. And also he's like doing it himself. And it's guitar tracks and, programmed drums and like top melodies and vocals, and bass lines. And that's about it. And it's so stripped back and it's so beautiful and it's so him. And I really, really like it. That's how I want my music to come across. Like, wow, this is River Langford. Like, this is how he feels. This is coming from deep within himself. This doesn't have an audience or an intended audience. This is just a creative outlet to kind of be like, here's a deep part of me that I hold so dear. Here you go, and kind of show it, And I love him for that because he gets that too. So my next album's called Running, and it's basically just an explanation of what the word running means to me. Whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional or whatever, that might mean to anyone, because we're always running towards our goals, running towards something. We're always running away from our past, and things we've done wrong. So it's like, it's kind of like an explanation of what running feels like, and even the physical act, like physically running. You're panting and it's hard, but you feel good, and at a certain point you hit that stride and you run, and you can run for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, and, from a physical to a metaphorical, like you run towards your goals, no matter what, you put a foot in front of the other and you do it, because otherwise it's not going to happen. If you sit down, it's not going to happen. Yeah, so when it comes to music, my biggest goal for pretty much my whole life is just to live off music, to make enough money to pay my rent, funnily enough, and eat some food, So that's been my goal, and now I'm kind of there, like I'm paying my rent, I'm playing a lot, I'm doing my thing. And yeah, it's just been my passion. And I guess my next goal is just to, make someone feel the way I felt from my idols, for someone to go, wow, he did this vocal track and here's a harmony here and everything's panned and, there's a phaser on this and this on that, and I really, like, my goal is just to touch one person with my music, to make one person inspired to do what so many people have done for me. If I can make one person learn piano or learn how to produce or learn how to drum or learn how to play guitar, like that's my goal. I don't really worry about money, you know, after my basic human needs are kind of met. You know, it's just about emotion, and I just want to inspire, sort of thing, like I've been inspired by so many. Another important thing about my music is that I add a lot of layers. So my writing process is sporadic and, you know, ADHD and, you know, kind of eccentric, and I add and add and add and add and add. And then a big part of it is taking away, you know, and it's this beautiful, like, almost spiritual thing. When you write something, it's like you're creating something, you know. When you have a baby, you're creating a baby, you know, and it's like to take away. When you take away, it's like taking away little bits of yourself, and you keep the bits that shine, you know. And really, when I'm writing music for musicians, you know. So I'm writing little tiny hits that, you know, only I've heard in my idol stuff, you know, like Steve Lacy when he adds a vocal line. That's how I write. You know, it's really beautiful, and I can't recommend writing like that enough, because I see too many musicians like not taking a chance on adding, you know, and it should be adding to the point where you're like, my file's corrupted, you know, I've added too much, I've had a system overload, and then you take back. So yeah, look out for that soon-ish.